Everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we're focused on growing the community. I'm your host, Mike, and with me, as always, is Evan.
Magical Evan today, I think. That's what I'm going to go with.
Keep telling yourself that. But that being said, today we're very excited to be talking about, I think, one of the really, really fun aspects of the new edition of Old World, and controversial a little bit, a little different than older editions, is the magic system. But in particular, we're going to be talking about the magic lores. We're not going to dive too much into the mechanics of the system in terms of, hey, the old system was focused on dice pulls. Hey, the new system is more streamlined.
Yeah,
Quite frankly, there's pros and cons to both, but we love the new system. Magic is core. It's integral to this game. It's super fun. It's super thematic. And the spells are just iconically so part of Warhammer, so part of Old World. And it's really exciting to see the lores we got in the books, the lores we see in some of the legacy factions, but we got some of that and some of the new stuff coming out of the new arcane journals, right?
yeah, absolutely. I think that the arcade journals that have new lores in them are automatically more interesting to me personally because I feel like which lore of Magic you pick can really make the army feel different and interesting while you're playing. Now, there's certainly
Mhm.
three lores of Magic that stand out as being basically the top tier, most competitive playing list. Blah blah blah. I'm falling asleep over here, Mike. But the fact that you just have more options of things to play on a fun Tuesday night or whatever, or like I do, bring it to a tournament, is awesome. And I think that's one of the things we want to talk about today. What is the most interesting and exciting lore to play? Because guess what? It's not battle magic that puts me to sleep.
Yep, and I think that's the fun thing to for us to dive into. It's that variety. It really is one of those fun flavors that basically from game to game, right? Depending on what you're doing, or event to event, right? Because typically you're locked into a lore for an event, for a 1 day event or such. But
Yeah,
just switching from like demonology to shadow or necromancy or something else, it just dramatically changes the way your army plays, the synergy, the combinations that you're getting. So sometimes it's what, it's not about changing the lore just because, hey, this is more powerful. Sometimes what, this is just a really fun way, a variant way to play this list, right? And you didn't have to swap out your units, you didn't have to swap out your characters. It's such an easy way to go from one play style or variation of a build to another so easily.
absolutely, absolutely. So why don't we jump into it? We have a tier list here. I made this. And just so everyone's clear, again, we're circle back to this one more time. We're gonna rank the Magic lores based on what we find to be the most interesting and most fun on the tabletop to play with when you are choosing it for fun and casual weekday games. And when I play with my friends and I'm practicing for tournaments, I still bring the lores of Magic that I find interesting and fun to build my army around, not just I guess I would probably have a higher win rate if I pick this thing. So we're going to talk about why a certain lores of Magic are interesting and fun, and who gets access to them, and why those spells, for certain spells in there are really fun and create nice narrative moments, right? That's a big piece for me.
All right, so where are we going to start, sir? What's the first one on the list?
Yeah, so I'm just starting to learn the tier list maker thing. So I couldn't figure out how to put labels on the images. So I'm going to just tell you. So we have a different little model from each faction here, a different wizard to represent one. So the first one is the Dark Elf Sorceress, and she represents dark magic. Now, I'm just going to say right away, I think that dark magic scores pretty highly because it has a couple of very obvious combos that seem very exciting and interesting to want to build around. Probably the most obvious one is Battle Lust, which if you just give pretty much any melee unit in the game Hatred and Frenzy, they immediately just supercharge how much damage they can do. If it's like a single one attack infantry unit, it can like triple how much damage they do, right? Because instead of hitting on fours and then with one attack, now they're rerolling to hit and they have two attacks, which creates increases their damage by like 250%, something like that. And so you just immediately have your eyes bulge out of your head, like, oh god, I really want to cast that, and then go hit someone in the face with it.
Yeah, so it might be worth just dark magic just going through real quick because not everybody's
Yeah,
going to have the spells memorized. They're not all going to
not like
do it,
me.
so I'll just kind of go through it real quick. So starting
Sure,
with
yeah,
dark magic, right? The signature spell is Doom Bolt, right? So that's
yeah.
kind of your magic missile, very effective Doom Bolt spell, range 24, which is
And
great.
just by the
Um,
way, Doombolt, right? It's a blast template, which most people go, "Oh
mhm.
no, that's not going to hit frickin' anybody." And I have had a few times where I'm casting Doombolt at a frickin' a high elf eagle, hoping to get the single hit on a 5+ to wound. However, when you cast Doombolt on a unit of like 25 zombies, you hit a
Mhm.
lot of dudes. Okay, that is
Mhm.
a lot of hits, and they're AP2 hits as well. So if you're shooting against a block of infantry who's a toughness 3 like elves and stuff, that's a very good amount of damage. Okay, strength 3
Yep.
AP2, that's what a pillar of fire does. Everyone likes pillar of fire. Doombolt does the same thing, and it's a long range magic missile. So
Yeah. Doombolt's pretty cool.
Hmm.
So that's a great. So it's a really strong magic missile. It's a fun magic missile, and again, it's not. That's not the one you want for trying to plunk a couple wounds off a dragon or something, but it's great for dealing with big bricks of infantry, or really fun because the AP is what also makes it really, really effective to use too versus heavily armored things. So beyond that, it also has Word of Pain, right? So this is effectively it's a hex spell, right? This is the minus strength, minus toughness. So that's a great, fun hex spell out of the gate. Fun and useful. Pretty much just about anything. But there's everything in the game. Yeah, I would prefer that to be one less strength and one less toughness. That's pretty good. One of the really fun hex spells. So very, very useful in
Yeah.
so many situations, shooting, combat, whatever you're doing. Then you have Stream of Corruption, right? It's a sailment spell, not as effective because now we're talking about a template,
It's a
narrow
flame
edge.
template, Mike. Flame templates are
It
awesome.
is.
And it's really fun to put that over a group of like 36 skeleton spearmen and be like, I don't even know how many guys this is going to hit. What do you think?
You're not wrong about that, but typically I don't want my wizards to get that close to those big bricks. But again, it depends on if you have a demon prince or something else that's super beefy that you don't mind getting close. You could do some spicy things with that.
Well, like
Infernal
for
Gateway,
example, right, Mike? So one person who can
yeah,
take this is a sorceress who's riding a black dragon. So
that's a
then
pretty
she can be
beefy
in
wizard.
combat. You know who else can
Yeah,
take this?
that's
A
a beefy
beast
wizard.
lord, or I'm sorry, Great Bray Shaman. I'm thinking about him as a
Yeah,
beast lord because Great Bray Shaman can be on foot and he can buy full plate chaos armor and have a 4+ armor save and a 5+ ward save and just be
yeah.
toughness 5 sitting in the front ranks. Does he care about being in combat? I don't think so. I think
Well,
he's fine.
because beastmen are awesome. That's why. So yeah, depending on again, if you have a wizard who doesn't mind getting into melee, you could really surprise your opponent with this.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Infernal Gateway, a great conveyance spell, really cool for teleporting around the field, right? Friendly characters,
I think it's
main
one of
card
my
characters
favorite
can be
conveyance
in combat.
spells because it's
Hmm.
super useful to just zip your character out of combat. If, for example, if you have your character like, let's say I have my Dreadlord, Dark
Yep,
Elf like Lord, and he's on a dragon, and he's stuck in combat
yep,
against the Green Knight, and for some
yep,
reason I just didn't take a magic weapon on this guy, and he's just stuck there forever.
yep.
I just cast Infernal Gateway, get him the hell out of there, and you know what you can do after you cast Infernal Gateway, Mike? You can also move after casting it. So you can cast on somebody to
Hmm.
get them out of combat, and then they could just run. He could fly 10 inches after that.
Yep.
It's like
The
TMP
only
with no
Yeah.
restrictions.
You just can't be within 6 inches of an enemy model.
Yeah.
But beyond that, again, for utility's sake, it's just super useful. Sometimes it's about getting out of combat. Sometimes it's just about repositioning. Sometimes it's about getting that additional. It's just a great, great teleport spell. It's just limited to a character. But again, for character control and utility, really powerful.
Yeah.
Really fun to use. I love things like that because again, spells like that, movement, things like that, just kind of show off your creativity as a general, and they're really really fun to use in the battle because it allows you to surprise you didn't see that coming, or do something that your opponent hopefully wasn't planning ahead. That sometimes they know what you're going to do. All right, number four, they had Phantasmagoria. So this is the vortex of the lore, right? So this is the template, and this is the one about the panic test. So not my favorite vortex, honestly.
It's incredibly complicated. It is the most complicated spell in the game, and everyone's going to constantly forget how it even freaking works.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the one where it's the blast template. It has a 12-inch radius. It doesn't move. It's treated state and terrain. And enemy units that end their move within 12 inches of the template, if somebody just take a panic test. So inherently, right there, my problem with that is there's multiple armies that are just immune to psychology. So effectively, this could just be not
Right.
applicable
But the
in
main thing that
some
you
parts of
actually
your
want,
game.
Mike, you don't want them to panic. You actually want them to become impetuous. That's actually what you want to have happen. So you'd rather than pass the panic test and just become impetuous. The problem is how long does it take before they then do this move, then become impetuous, and then the following turn, then they maybe have to charge you if the vortex is still there. So they have like 3 dispel attempts before they're gonna potentially have to charge you.
Yeah, it's just the terms, the idea is cool, but the terms and conditions and the immediate, there's too long of a delay from when it actually takes effect. So I actually think it's one of the weaker vortexes in the game. I would love it if GW at some point looked at revising this in the future. So fun idea, not great execution on it. So that's why people just don't use it. Battle Lust, as Evan said earlier, that is maybe one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, spells. In fact, it could be a whole reason people would take this lore just for battle lust. I know I've done that before, simply just to make a friendly unit frenzied. Okay, frenzied's good, right? That's cool. More attacks is good, and you can control when you're putting it on it. So you know you want to charge, so you're going to put it on when you want to charge. But it gives you hatred versus all enemies, and there are very few things in this game that give you rerolls. And being able to have rerolls to hit in that first round of combat is so powerful, especially if you have +1 attack on your unit. Suddenly, you go from 0 to hero with that spell. If you can pull that off, and I've seen this pulled off with Bretonians. You're like, how do you do that? Well, with you can take with the Arcane Journal, you can get the dark magic lore. But again, I've done this with undead and different things. I've done that. It's if you can pull this off, it can win games. That combo. It's super powerful.
It's also incredibly obvious, and Battlelust has a 12-inch range.
Yeah, the range is the biggest issue or the biggest drawback. And again, this is one of those things that you see it coming. Like before the battle, hey, my opponent has battle lust. Okay, where's his wizard? Here's the unit he's going to catch. So you see it coming a mile away. Like it's telegraphed really, really big. So you either are you need plan ahead to get out of the range of that thing, or B, plan to buff put a unit in the way to absorb the charge. I know I've done that before where hey, my opponent's gonna battle us the Pegasus Knights to charge my Graveguard and they'd beat them all up if they got that off. I'm like, cool. I'm gonna put 3 fell bats literally in front of my Graveguard. So and you're frenzied. So if you want to charge, you have to charge. You have
And
to
then you have
charge
to
them. They're
overrun
in
as
front,
well, because you're still
and then
frenzied when you finish combat,
that's
so you
right.
have to overrun. And then you overrun into
And
whatever
guess
unit
what?
you
The
control.
fell bats are only 2 inches away. So when they slam into the Graveguard, they don't get the 3-inch charge; they get a 2-inch charge. And again, Battle Lust only lasted that round. It's not remains in play. And also, what do they have? The first turn charge, additional attack. Like they lose that
Furious
bonus
Charge,
too.
yeah.
So thank you, Furious Charge. So um, you see it coming a mile away. If you know it's coming, you can do things to absorb or speed bump or avoid the situation. But again, incredibly powerful combo. If you pull it off as the attacker, super, super exciting to roll those dice. Hopefully, you don't roll your ones into ones, which does happen still sometimes. And then the last spell is Soul Eater. So a second assailment spell.
Yeah, which is really cool for, like, let's say you're gonna have, a demon prince. I think that dark magic feels like, yeah, I'm a demon prince.
Mhm.
I want to, debuff you. I want to go in there with multiple assailant spells, and that just seems great. Except for it's like a single strength 3 hit, and then what it's
It
good
is,
at,
yeah,
it's
it's
good
true.
at multi wounds 3. So ideally, you go in there and you say, aha, this elf wizard, I'm just gonna wail you into death in one hit. But
Mhm.
like, it's only a
Yeah,
strength 3 hit, so it's still only a 50-50. Even if you cast it, it only hurts someone on a 50-50 chance if they're toughness 3. If they're not toughness 3, then it doesn't hurt them at all. It's kind
right.
of
That's
weird.
that's the problem. So it ignores armor, which is great, but they still get ward and regeneration. So it's like the things you'd really want to use this against, because it's against a single model. You'd want to use it against like the dragon or the warlord, or so, ideally this be one of those big pop against something that's really, really hard to kill. But because it's strength 3, and he still gets his ward and regeneration, it just doesn't do what you want it to do.
Why doesn't
Again,
the
it's like
spell say, if I cast this, a single model that I'm in base to base contact with loses D3 wounds, that's it. No save. Why doesn't it say that?
because that would be so powerful
I
if
think
it
that's
did that.
I don't think that that's too powerful for. I tried to cast the spell. If you can't dispel me, then you just lose D3 wounds. Because this spell
I mean,
could just, if the spell hurts you, you lose 3. But most of the time, it just you cast it, then it just doesn't hurt them. But if it did, then they lose 3 at once. So
yeah,
D3 it doesn't have more damage potential. It just has more consistency, right?
yeah. Well, I think there's multiple ways they could have gone about making this more effective, more exciting. So,
It's
but
called
effectively,
Soul
it's just
Eater. They eat your
you would
soul, and
think.
yet it's not that
Well,
scary.
and it's also the sixth spell in the list, and it's only 7+ to cast. Typically, I like it with it's harder to cast. It's more powerful the more you go up to the list, but it doesn't actually work that way. So anyway, yeah, I think they missed on that one. They missed on Phantasmagoria, but Word of Pain, great. Stream of Corruption could be really fun. Infernal, great way, great. Battle Lust, great. And of course, your signature spell Doombolt really good. So I really like Dark Magic. I've taken it multiple times on a few different lists. I think it's fun because it provides you get some missiles, you get some assailment stuff, and you get some utility with teleportation and battle lust. So you get hexes and enhancements. It
Yeah.
really does give a good variety. I just get frustrated when I end up with like Phantasmagoria or Solier. And it's like, dang, I just rarely finding effective uses for those spells.
So I think that there's completely intentional that some of the spells aren't supposed to be that good because you're supposed to just roll your spells randomly and hey, sometimes you get good spells, sometimes you don't. That's kind of what I feel like they intended it to be. There's not really supposed to be a lore where all six spells are like, oh my god, eyes popping out of my head. I want all of these spells. Um, but I would say that dark magic is basically in the awesome tier. That's where I'm gonna.
Yay, there we go. We
All right,
figured it
so
out.
yeah,
All right. So
basically I'm gonna put it
okay.
in awesome tier.
All right,
Um,
starting strong. Starting
and I
strong.
think the reason why it drops down a little bit is because I think that Soul Eater could be more fun. Phantasmagoria, super cool idea. Also could be like actually work because it has never ever worked. And I play Dark Magic a lot, and it just doesn't do what you're supposed to do with that.
Yeah. And I like the concepts of those two
Yeah.
spells, but in execution, it's the mechanics need a revision. Um,
Also, the other
yeah.
spells that are more consistent have really high casting values. Most of them are like 9 or 10 plus, and a lot of them have very short range. So a lot of the other
Mhm.
lores, it sounds really really fun in your head, and then it's very hard to actually make any of this work. And when you actually play it on the table, I would say you mostly rely on things like Infernal Gateway and Battle Lust, because at least then you're casting on your own units. It's really hard to get off Word of Pain because it's a 10 plus to cast and it's an 18-inch range. So sometimes you're just not
Mhm.
ranged people, and so yeah, I think it's
Or
just
typically, you're
dropped down a
always going to
bit,
be with range of the other wizard when you're trying to cast it too.
pretty
So,
much. So then the next
cool. All right,
one,
so that's dark magic. What do we got next, sir?
so we have a Chaos Wizard here, and he is representing
Oh,
what he should be representing, which is Demonology.
ooh, demonology. All right, so starting with our signature spell, the summoning. So that's another magic missile, range 18, 9 plus. It's 2d6 strength 4 hits, very strong with AP -1. Pretty good signature spell.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
very
I mean,
cool.
not much to say about it. It's just very effective. Really, the only negative to it is 18-inch range. Beyond that, it's a one of the better magic missiles. It's very, very effective. So you definitely see that a lot, like with chaos lists who will want to go for all magic missiles or magic missile builds. That's definitely a strong one to have on the list. All right, so moving on. Then the first spell out of the gate, we have the Steed of Shadows, right? So you got your range 15 inches, 9 plus to cast, and this gives you you have to be infantry. That's big criteria, and you can't move, fling. That's all that normal stuff. But you gain fly to the start of your
Mhm.
next sub phase, so that can be very powerful.
I really like to use this to take something like 3 Minotaurs and make them fly behind you, and suddenly they're just
Hmm.
behind you. And if you time it right, now if you try to turn around to face the Minotaurs, well now you can get charged in the rear by whatever the heck was on the other side of you, right?
Yeah, I've seen that too with was it the skin wolves, the werewolves effectively that they added. So I've seen it on that. So I think this is and typical the same strategy, right? They get close enough, right? That either A, they have an optimal charge in front of them, or B, they're intentionally trying to combo their wizard to get that unit and teleport and have them fly behind you just to have this massive typical threat, heavy infantry threat, these monstrous infantry threat that typically couldn't get behind your army suddenly becomes a massive threat that is behind your army. Because remember, it's a 6 turn game, so you don't need to be charging on turn 1 and turn 2, right? You pull off that great combo, or you disrupt his whole battle plan and get that turn 4 or 5 turn charge off. Still can be a game winner. So very very cool spell.
Yeah. I really like the idea of using this with witch elves. Just being like, ah
Mm,
ha ha, and then just throw witch elves at you. Love that. I really
yeah.
want to do that.
Eh,
Especially units like that have really high initiative. I want to fly them 1 inch away from you so that you charge me and I still hit you first. Well, I really
yeah.
want to make that happen. I think when you have initiative on your side, you can really do a lot of fun stuff with the infantry where you don't necessarily need to be charging.
Hmm.
However, I don't think that it would break the game if for some reason you were able to use Steed of Shadows to then charge further. I don't. I think that they tried really really hard to not let anyone get any way to charge further with any kind of spells, and I think that's kind of a bad thing. I actually think that it would really help infantry if there was at least one spell in the game that was like, you know what, suddenly they can charge further.
If it was restricted to infantry, I could see that totally being a thing.
Yeah,
But yeah, definitely. But again, the interesting thing about this spell too is it's not fly 10 like most things in the game are fly 8, 9, or
yeah,
10. It's fly 12. So it actually is the one of, if not the fastest movement in the game,
yes.
beyond a double movement in terms of the base movement value. All right, moving on. So that's one. So number two is Gathering Darkness, right? So we got a hex spell. 9 plus, 12-inch range. Okay, so that's already challenging out of the gate. A hex spell, you got to get real close,
It can target into
right?
combat though, so that's where you often will see. I'm going to try to use this after we're kind of locked in.
Yep. So it's -2 modifier to initiative of the victim, right? And to leadership.
Yes.
And you cannot use your general's inspiring presence. So that's very powerful. So, and as Evan said, I think the biggest special thing is at the end saying you can target things that are in combat. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I honestly think that this is really really cool. It can be difficult to get into range, but guess what? Dark elves have the focus familiar, which lets you cast from further away. So then that 12-inch
Hmm.
range becomes 24. Or like I was just saying, you don't cast this before you charge somebody. You cast this after we're already locked in combat, and I'm going to target somebody who's already in combat with you, and I want to make your leadership lower and not let you use your general's leadership, and then you're just gonna run away then. That's what you know. That's why I think that this spells they're thematically very well fit for Warriors Chaos because if they're already gonna beat you in combat, they don't need some kind of a buff. They're just gonna wail on you in the face. Just make a spell to make the other person run away. That's all you need.
Yeah, but keep in mind, it is, of course, that's the more challenging thing about doing it that way. If you were already in combat, is it means because this is in the hex, you're casting that in the strategy phase
Yeah,
versus if you're charging in the charge phase. So a lot of people inherently you want to like, hey, I want to cast this first, knowing that I'm going to charge you in the charge phase. But to Evan, to your point, there's also the expectation that you're going to be in combat the next turn, right? So it's not about I have to get my wizard super close and within danger before I even know if the charge is going to go off. It is wait for the charge to happen, know that I'm still going to be locked to combat. And then the next turn, when it's much safer for my wizard to get within that range, then cast this debuff.
yeah.
And hopefully that's going to tip the scales in your
And
favor.
that's what naturally makes enchantments and hexes a lot harder to use in this game because you can't move before you do it. If you cast a hex on someone, it's because they made the mistake of moving within range of it,
Hmm.
right? The other
Yep.
person has to let you cast Miasma Mirage. They have to let you cast Plague of Rust, but by choosing to move within range on their own turn and ending within range of your wizard.
Yep, and that's always a challenge, certainly for newer players, is they want to be, all right, yeah, I have to win or lose this fight in the first round of combat. It's like, no, no, it's a 6-turn game. You do not. And that's just, so that's why it's not harder to get off, but it requires you thinking a move ahead, like a chess move, right? It's not about the immediacy.
Right.
So,
Like what I'm talking about
um,
now would be, let's say I got my Chaos Lord on a dragon. I'm gonna park him somewhere and say, hey, you know what? You want to charge me with your dragon? Fine. But I'm gonna have my sorcerer right 12 inches away from where my dragon is. So you can charge
mhm,
me. We'll probably tie combat or whatever. I'll give ground, and then the sorcerer will cast Gathering Darkness on you. The next time around, maybe you're not so lucky. You got lower leadership, lower initiative, and you're just gonna get run down, buddy, because you're gonna be like leadership
mhm.
7 or something.
Yeah. The -2 to leadership can be very impactful. Um, okay, moving on to the third one, demonic familiars. So assailment spell, 8 inch, combat, right? We know that's an assailment spell.
It's 8
So
2
a
plus.
single enemy unit, the caster is engaged in combat with. Well, okay, yeah, we figured that. Suffers 2d6 straight 2 hits. So low on the straight, but no armor save is permitted.
Yes.
You can still get your ward and regeneration. So no armor save is spicy.
Yes, this murders Empire Knights like crazy. It's great. I
Yeah.
think this is a
And I
very,
know
very good spell.
And I know it says strength 2, but again, it's 2d6. So yes, you could roll really low, but the average is 7 on 2d6, and you could spike above 7, right? So if you're, and remember, it will auto hit, so you just need to roll to wound, right? So I know it's low on the strength, but going into things, whether it's them, Empire Knights or Chaos Knights or Blood Knights, things that have those 2-up saves or really, really, really good saves. And yes, some of them have T4, so you might need sixes. But again, you roll enough dice, you pop a single spell, one or two of those really, 40-point model knights. It's a big deal for
Yeah,
the result of that combat.
yeah, and if anyone's toughness 3 with decent armor save, it's pretty good. I think this is great.
Hmm.
I think that it's a bit more easy to use than a lot of some of the other assailant spells. Everyone loves Spectral Doppelganger, which does 2d6 hits at whatever your weapon is. Well, this is 2d6 hits at a pretty interesting weapon. Strength 2 no arm save. That's pretty interesting. It's got a good application out there.
Yep. All right, moving on to 4, demonic vessel. So an enhancement. All right, so we got some buffing going on. 10 plus to cast. Self. Okay, so that's the range. So until the end of this turn, the caster and their mount and the unit they have joined gain +1 to their strength and attack characteristics, and improve the armor piercing of their weapons by 1. That's a
Yes.
pretty good buff.
Yes. The catches are the following. One, you have to be in the unit, which means your wizard is planning on charging into combat, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the second thing is it's pretty hard to cast, and it also, it is range self. So once you're in combat, then you're not going to be dispelling much anymore. So it's like you're very much building your entire army around the one spell. And then here's the kicker: because of the way challenges work, this doesn't let you beat a big monster character in combat at all. Because let's say you have a sorceress on a cold one, and she joined a bunch of cold one knights, and she cast Demonic Vessel. And then all these cold one knights that are souped up to the absolute moon with strength 7 lances, 2 attacks each, AP 3. Actually, AP 4
Mhm.
if you have the Hargoneth banner, right? And every single cold one is 3 attacks with strength 5. Well, guess what? The dragon says, I'm going to issue a challenge. And if you
Yep.
decline, he can pick the wizard to decline. Now the buff turns off, so you get none of those benefits. Or if you accept, only one single guy, like the champion, for example, gets to fight him. So all of your other guys, they stand there with this super cool buff, not getting to use it at all.
Yeah, and that's honestly one of the challenges with the way they've constructed the magic system in this current edition, where like you're like, oh, cool, here's a really good a combat effective buff thing, but wait a second, it's 10 plus to cast. That's hard to cast. So I really want my level 3 or level 4 to be able to cast this in combat because it's so effective. But all of a sudden, if I have a level 3 and 4 in combat, now he's not dispelling what I need. And you typically, most armies only have one level 3 or 4, and he's not casting his other spells because he's stuck in combat. So because he
Yes.
can't do anything else, you're like, all right, well, okay, well then let's just take a level 1 or level 2 because it's worth throwing the points for level 1 or level 2 to try and get this off, and then I'm not worried about them losing all the other stuff. But the problem is, the level 1 or level 2 is a 10 plus to cast. So now it's going to be really hard to cast, right? So it's
Also, they
inherently
they then have to buy lore familiar to have a decent shot of even getting the spell in the first
right because they
place.
only have two.
So now,
Exactly
if
right.
they're cheaper, they're actually more expensive because they have to spend 30 of their points just doing that. And guess what? The level 2, like the sorceress on a cold one, just a level 2 sorceress, right? If she buys lore familiar, well, now how's she going to get any defense? She's toughness 4 with 2 wounds,
Yeah.
no armor. Like, how is she going to
Yep.
live?
And again, you could yeah, put it on like for chaos, like a sorcerer lord who's okay in combat, or a demon prince and such. But again, the problem is now you're not casting other spells, and now you're not dispelling it. If you have a demon prince who's tooled up, you probably do not have another really good spellcaster because he consumes so many points. So inherently, they made the whole magic system in this edition to punish you, or one of the counters to wizards is to tag them. Tag, you're in combat. That is a big counter for wizards, and then they started making mechanics that wanted the wizards to get into combat. And honestly, they just are they're contradictory. These
But that's how
these
it
the
works on a
mechanisms.
competitive level, Mike. But this is really fun when I do this. Put my sorceress on a cold one, stick her in the cold one knights, and you know what's great, Mike? I can still dispel if I murder every single halberdier that's in the unit I charge. And when I have a 7 wide unit of cold one knights that have demonic vessel cast on them, they killed 28 halberdiers out of a 24-man unit in one round of combat, and then I was just free and clear.
I
And
mean,
because it's
that's
not
because
battle lust, I don't have to overrun off the table or into a new unit. I can just restrain, sit and face, and be ready to dispel.
yeah, as long as you kill everything, then that solves your problem. But yeah, I mean, honestly, if you can pull this combo off though, with a
Super cool.
typically a cavalry unit, again, Chaos Knights would be great with this too. +1 strength and +1 attack is huge, absolutely huge, because
Yeah.
those things are typically wielding lances at that point, and then getting and the armor piercing. So pretty much anything this punches, if it's a big cavalry unit, is going to get vaporized. So hard to get off, but if you can pull it off, super, super cool. All right, so that was Demonic Vessel. On to Vortex of Chaos. So this is
It
the
sucks.
vortex
Move on.
the Lord gets. Oh, sadness. Well, what's at least worth
So
saying
lame.
about this? It's
It does
dangerous
nothing.
terrain. Exciting. What's dangerous terrain? And
But
you can
Mike,
suffer
it's
some
called the
hits.
Vortex of Chaos. It should like every time it hits a
Yeah.
unit, you roll a die, and on it you consult some table where maybe they all turn into they all have horrible nightmares, or they all like lose an initiative for the rest of the game. Like it should be a really cool like interesting mutation
Yeah.
table or something, and it does D6 strength 3 hits.
Yeah, with no AP, it's super not. I mean, not very chaosy.
Can it do
Yeah,
two D6 hits at strength D6? That would be more fun.
I definitely agree that this feels like a missed opportunity, and it just feels like they had a vortex idea, and it's might be the most boring vortex of all of them. At least Phantasmagoria is trying to do something compelling. This isn't even trying to do anything interesting at all. Yeah. All right, moving on. Vortex of Sadness. Okay, there's last spell, Demonic Vigor. Okay, another enhancement. So we had one hex, and this is the second enhancement. So two enhancements in this lore. 9 to cast, so not easy. Range 15. So until the end of the turn, the target friendly unit gains +1 to movement and toughness and initiative. Ooh.
Yes.
And it's the whole unit.
Yes. It's really cool for helping you get a little bit further charge range. The problem with this spell is that, like, well, vast majority of the time, you don't need toughness when you're about to charge somebody, and you can't cast this if you're already locked in combat. So you're only ever casting this on somebody who's about to make a charge. That's it. It's the only
Yep.
time to do it. And then if you're gonna make this charge, you very often do so much damage the other person can't hit you anyway. So like, who do I need to cast this on?
Yep. Yep. It
But
makes sense.
it is super
Yeah.
cool to do it anyway. Even though it has fewer applications, it's very fun to be like, hey, my witch elves are toughness 4, or I'm going to make my dragon toughness 7 before he gets to fly through those fanatics or something like that. It's great. I
Yeah,
think it's fun.
but to your point, right, that because you have to do this going into a charge, the
Yeah.
toughness and initiative are not nearly as applicable as they are in the second round of combat. But it doesn't last till the second round of combat. Now you're in combat. Now you can't cast it. So
Yeah,
yeah, Bob's
both
your uncle.
Dark
I think
Magic
yeah.
and Demonology have a lot of spells that only last for that one round, not for that second round, and make it a lot. They make it basically aggressive only, and they can't use them defensively, which is why Elementalism is very often picked instead, because Elementalism has spells that last for both rounds and allow you to play more cagey, more defensively. I'm going to sit back, cast Earth and Ramparts, and then I'm going to cast Plague Rust on you. Your move. Now you have 2 turns of being screwed.
Yep. All right. So we got through the lore of demonology. Where
Yeah.
do we rank this?
I'm honestly going to say this is super fun. I think that these are very often the most memorable games I have. You have a lot of like fun shenanigans with Steed of Shadows. You have Demonic Vessel allowing you to absolutely blender the crap out of everything. There's a lot of fun plays people do with Empire where you just get a bunch of halberdiers and you suddenly make them, go Super Saiyan. I think that, things like Vortex of Chaos are not that big of a deal. It's just a spell you usually just don't even take, you just swap it out or whatever. So I think that this makes a lot of fun ideas in people's minds and makes people have a lot of fun games when they play it. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I would say for the lore, you have to build your list specifically for your wizard to be really going with a unit that we're going to go punch something in the face together. As long as you are building a list with a wizard to go punch something in the face with typically with a cavalry unit is where you're going to see this. It's a really fun list, and gives you tons of potential. So I think where people are struggling with that is they're trying to put this on wizards who they don't want to get in combat, or they're trying to be more defensive. And to Evan's point, this is a run across the table and punch your opponent in the face magic core, and it's very good at that. And as long as you're playing it that way, you're going to have fun with your games, and such. And sometimes just blendering the other thing on the other side could be really satisfying. So yeah, we don't see this taken as much, but I think because players are probably taking more reliable or ones that are keeping their wizard much further away from the opponent. But if you're just looking for a really fun game and having a blast with your wizard who's going to run at the enemy screaming, this is a great lord to pick.
Absolutely. Also, if you just buy units that are already decent in combat and they don't need any buffs, then you can just buy spells that help you move or just help you shoot things to death instead of having to buy spells that just make a unit that's actually bad somewhat decent, right?
Yep. All right. What's next?
So the next one is Primal Magic. So I used a Beastman Bray Shaman for this one. Now this one's pretty new.
Ooh,
You probably don't even have the list in front of you of the spells. Now
I
I've got the
I
Arcane
know.
Journal in the other room. The primary spell is a vortex that like lowers the leadership of nearby units. And so
Hmm.
you kind of build into your plan, okay, well, maybe I take that spell and then you start lowering the leadership of people who you then also lower in lots of other beast many ways, and then give them lots of terror checks, give them lots of break checks with lower leadership, and things like Kralma or the Manbane standard to lower their leadership even more. And it's starting to create
Hmm.
this idea in people's minds of having this like leadership bomb beastman list, which I think is a super cool idea. You will have to take that spell, the signature spell, instead of taking Vile Tide or something like that. And it's in particular, instead of taking what's it called? The one where you have to take, it's like a vampire count scream where you have to take a leadership test and you lose wounds if you roll higher.
Yep.
It's
The willing
devolve.
dirge.
Devolve is what it's called.
Yeah, start over and let's just go through it one by one.
All right,
So
everyone.
start when you're
I
ready.
went to the other room where I got my arcane journal that I just picked up this morning.
Ooh.
Where I've got the lore of Primal Magic in front of me. So the first one, Primordial Gloom, is a magical vortex. You place the 3-inch template 12 inches away. It doesn't move. It's dangerous terrain. That's pretty standard. And then while
Mhm.
they're within 6 inches of the template, enemy units suffer -1 to their leadership characteristic to a minimum of 2, and treat open ground as difficult terrain. So, for one, if I'm playing against fanatics, that's incredible because it's basically just like Tempest, where you create this giant bubble of fanatics die.
Sadness.
That's
Poor
awesome.
fanatics. What did
But
they ever do to
also,
you, those fanatics? Oh.
lowering people's leadership within 6 inches just by one. It's like
Hmm.
that's people love that spiritual vortex does this.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
this is like a spiritual vortex as a signature spell.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
it's a
pretty
pretty good.
good.
It's a pretty good utility spell because it's bringing more than one utility a thing to the table. So I love that it's doing multiple things.
All right, so then we have Call of the Wild. This is a conveyance spell, and this one is can target units that are infantry or cavalry until the end of the turn. They get reserve move.
Oh.
That's also really really good.
Hmm.
So you can cast this on somebody nearby. Now you can't cast it on your, Beastman Chariot guy because it's only infantry cavalry. But you know what you can cast on? You can just cast on the Wizard Bunker. If he's hanging out in a bunch of Ungor, it's amazing to be
Hmm.
able to move within range, cast some spells, move a little bit further
Hmm.
away, move somewhere safe, or just to be able to keep up with the rest of the army that's sprinting towards the enemy. You just want to move 4 inches, cast your spells, and then reserve move 4 more inches, and you can keep up with everyone. That's super super
Yep.
useful. Reserve move, great. Um,
Very, very effective in so many different ways. We've covered it in other episodes. So, again, I think the biggest thing for the Beastman is it's less for ranged shooting, and for the Beastman, where this really takes shape, is that's a huge buff for the Wizard. It just creates so much more mobility and options for the Wizard to get really creative and getting his spells off and getting into position.
So then we have in the Gloaming Wildwood, which is remains in play. This is the Hex, and this is the one where the target enemy unit has fear in every unit in your army. And if the units in your army
Hmm.
already caused fear, they instead cause terror in that unit, which means you can cast this on somebody and then immediately charge them with every Razor Gore in your army, and they have to take a terror check for every single one of those. And that's just Razor Gore. What if it's somebody else? Like, what if it's regular Dragon Ogre units or something, or Minotaurs? You have a lot of stuff that can cause fear, and if you can just make someone take 9 terror tests in one turn, they're gonna fail at least one of them.
That's really powerful. That
That
it's
is
and again, yeah, it's not about the terror in combat. It's just about because inherently the Beastmen have a lot of units. Inherently, they're more of a horde army, and so being able to do that multi-charge, 3, 4, 5 terror tests plus in a turn, which you can totally do with this army because there's so many things that have fear out of the gate. Wow, that is a really cool spell.
Then we have Flock of Doom, which, by the way, you know who else has a Flock of Doom spell? The Wood Elves.
Oh, oh,
There are two
oh,
Flock of
that's
Doom spells, and they do two different things.
well, they're two. You could have more than one type of Doom. Doom doesn't play by your rules. Doom plays by its own rules,
This is a
sir,
mistake, Mike.
and possibly an oversight. That might, yeah, possibly an oversight. Yeah.
So this one is an assailant spell where you put a 3-inch blast template over the unit. It scatters, which is
Yeah.
awful. And then
Yeah.
it just does strength 3, AP 0 with multiple wounds 2 to people under it. If it didn't scatter, I'd be super excited. I would love to just do a Doom Bolt, but into melee. I think that'd be awesome. But it scatters. When you scatter D3+1, even with a large blast, you often don't hit anybody. You hit nothing.
It's a pretty big scatter. Because D3+1, the average is 2+1, so the average is 3 inches. That's when the template's only, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, like scattering 3 inches on average away from, because you're gonna put it in the most optimal place. And now it's 3 inches off of it.
Yeah.
The number of things that just reduced that you're gonna hit could be, 80% less of things you're gonna hit at that point. That's a massive scatter. Yep,
I think
that's
it should
unfortunate.
not scatter. Please. Thank you. Okay. Um, When we have Fury of the Beast, which is an enchantment, you cast on yourself, and the caster and any unit they've joined gets fight in extra ranks. Now, the immediate thought is, I want my Bestigor to fight in 2 ranks. because Bestigor are
Oh,
strength 6. Like Bestigor are basically Chaos Warriors, except they have Stubborn and Veteran and Warband and Movement 5. So Bestigor with like great weapons are just a pretty good unit. They're just very expensive. I love trying to use them, and it doesn't go super well. In particular, they absolutely suck monkey balls when they're trying to play against plague monks with the plague priest on his little plague chariot in there. They cannot deal with that to save their lives. It is so bad. It is very, very sad. And the reason for that is because that plague chariot lowers their toughness and makes them all -1 to hit, and it's just like, man, they sit there
madness.
doing nothing.
Yep.
But fight extra ranks, amazing on one particular unit that no one uses. So that's cool. I'm very excited about
Hmm.
that. Um,
Hmm.
and it really makes me excited to put my toughness 5 Great Bray Shaman in the front ranks of an infantry unit and just walk into combat.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So then we have Strangle Root, a magic missile. It's 4d6 range where you draw a line and any model that's hit gets d3 hits at strength 3 AP2. So, Mike, this is like if we drew a line and every single model that gets hit was hit by a pillar of fire. So if I hit 5 models, I hit you
Uh,
with like 5 of those. Like it's, you know what I mean? It's
what's the
similar.
range?
4d6 inches.
Okay, there it is. Because it's random, you don't know. Yes, that
Well, you
has.
roll it before you pick your direction, I assume. That's how everyone else plays it whenever they use theirs.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. But inherently, it's a good spell. I like that it's a spell that mechanically the line that it encourages the wizard that need to get close to the enemy. So I think that's great. And again, it's also positioning, right? So you could pull off some really cool stuff with that and such. I definitely know players love to get into arguments of, oh well, my line went through diagonal, this and that. Personally,
Yeah.
I always rule it. It's just like
Typically because you're not going
a
straight
cannon.
through.
It'd be the
If
same
there are
thing.
3 ranks of guys, you can hit 6 of them because you can hit 1, 2, then 3, 4, and then 5, 6, kind of in a diagonal line. So a diagonal line can
Yeah,
hit
and
2
again,
guys per rank.
that's what always causes arguments with players as well. Am I doing the diagonals and getting the double hits, or does it work like a cannon where it's just going to
It
hit
does
one
not.
through? But
Well, they need to clarify because evidently it does not
I
work like a
agree.
can. It's 2
They
guys per
should
rank.
clarify that, and they
Yeah.
haven't.
Huh.
So I love the idea of these spells, but I hate that it causes arguments in the player base. That being
Perfectly
said,
fine.
a really cool spell.
So if you have a unit that's only 3 ranks deep, I can cast this and it can hit 6 guys and then do 6 D3 hits. That is a lot of hits.
It is. It's a
If I'm
very
casting
powerful
this into a
spell.
bunch of like sword masters or something, then it's also AP2, so it would just kill the sword masters on a 4 plus with 6
Mhm.
D3 of them.
Yep. As long as you get close enough and roll high enough on the range,
Hey
bam, bam,
Mike,
bam.
what item do beastmen have that
They
everyone
have lots
hates?
of items. The minus to hit item.
No, the hag tree fetish item that lets you reroll to wound with.
Oh, that's an
And what kind of
evil,
spell is this, Mike?
evil, evil item. Oh, you can't use that on that, can you?
You can.
Oh,
You can reroll to wound with Strangleroot if you know you just have to roll the spell. But my argument to everyone on in the internet that I've been furiously having without having tried this at all is that people say I'm going to take Hag True Fetish and then I'm going to take Elementalism because Elementalism is the only other lore that Beastmen have where you have a magic missile that's not the signature. So then I'll take Elementalism. Hopefully I roll Wind Blast and I can reroll to roll Wind Blast. I'm such a big brained person. Wind Blast is strength 5, so rerolling to win with it is not like that's super amazing. And also, it's only like D3 plus 3 hits. It's not that many hits. This could be an ass load of lower strength hits that you reroll all of them. This is a second Vile Tide that auto hits, I think, everything in a line. He can shoot into combat.
that's the potential of that is incredibly powerful.
I strangle root you into combat, and then all of your Blood Knights who just went drilled to go 10 wide, they're all D3 hits that I reroll to wound with.
Yep. Yeah, it's the fact that it's D3 per model is what makes it so potentially so powerful. Now you
I
can
think this
still
just
roll a
sounds
bunch of
fun.
ones, but yeah, that's you would take a wizard just
Oh,
for that combo.
also, Mike, this is only enemies. You can just shoot into combat. It doesn't hit your own dudes.
Oh my goodness.
That just
Oh my
sounds
goodness.
hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, honestly, you know what that sounds like? It sounds like what you wish the Skaven were doing with a lot of
Exactly.
their stuff. And looks like the Beastmen are get one. So that is spicy. That
So,
is really
Mike,
spicy.
there used to be this spell called Crack's Call, which was basically this, and the Skaven had it. And now we have it.
Yeah, I guess the Beastmen stole it. All
So
right,
then
what else they got?
The last one is neath, neath,
Neath.
as in
Neath.
beneath, but without the B.
Oh,
Neath the
well, let's not
shaded
waste
woad
time
span.
on B. Just Neath. Okay. Okay. What's it do?
Neath the shaded woad span is a vortex, and this one is a large blast. You have 15 inches away. You can chuck it at somebody, and then it's doesn't move. So another doesn't move one, which not moving dangerous terrain is actually incredibly useful. That's what wood elves do with a forest. They just summon a not moving thing that's just dangerous. That's it, right? That does
Mhm.
this, but has other rules too. When enemy units are within 6 inches of it, they suffer -2 to their ballistic skill. So this does work on Tomb Kings because not -1 to hit doesn't work on Tomb Kings, but -2 to their ballistic skill does. And then any enemy unit that ends movement within 3 inches of it has to take a panic test. If they fail, they flee away from the nearest enemy unit. So this has like a Phantasmagoria-like effect as well, besides just being lowering ballistic skill.
Doing three things. That's very, very good vortex because it does multiple things. Yeah. Spicy.
So a lot of the, by the way, so we've got 3 spells in here. No, including the signature, 4 of the spells. Let me just make sure I'm not doing this wrong. No, three. Okay, so fine. 3 of the spells in here are remains in play. Remains in play spells are very nice for a wizard who wants to get locked in combat because then I cast them once, they're active. Now I'm in combat, but it's fine. They're already up. I'm good, right? So you have these
Hmm.
spells you can throw out there and then get into combat, and it's fine that you're in combat because you don't need to cast them.
Yeah, it really feels like a well crafted lore in a lore that was crafted with Beastmen intentionally in terms of their play style. I think they did a really good job.
I stretch and again because I haven't used this yet, and I know that a lot of people were very underwhelmed when they first read it. I actually think that this is one of the most interesting and fun lores in the game, and I'm immediately putting it in super fun. And the reason for that is because,
Unproven though, unproven yet. You
yeah,
have to
right,
play
but
it.
the reason for this is because it creates entirely new builds for how to play this army, where you focus on essentially buffing up basically debuffing the enemy with leadership, doing even more magic missile shenanigans, and getting into combat with your wizard and being on the front lines. And that's just awesome. Throwing out this -2 to ballistic skill bubble in front, like 15 inches away. So it's 15 inches to the center. Then that thing's got a 2.5 inch diameter. So that's 17 and
Hmm.
a half inches. And then it's anyone within 6 inches from that. So then that's 23.5 inches away. So somebody who's almost 2 feet away from me, you can just say, all of you guys have -2 to hit against me in a big bubble. You can just throw this at a gun line. Now they can't hit you.
Yeah, well, it's going to be very effective. Yeah, assuming again you're still going to get within range, like they're going to likely get a chance to dispel it. But to your point, I think one of the biggest things it gives is not only does it sound like a whole bunch of fun mechanics with the list. I like that many of the spells do more than one thing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just do one thing. So I love the creativity there. I love the movement shenanigans. I'm not thrilled about the potential player arguments, but a lot that's easily solved with an FAQ. And I think to your point, the biggest thing it brings is the lore itself opens up a whole bunch of new creative ways for the Beastman army to craft lists specifically around this lore, which I love that it is opening up new list ideas. So I think that's fantastic. All right, should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, so it's funny here. I used an ogre slaughtermaster here to represent illusion because that's
Oh,
ogres have access to elementalism, which they don't need. It doesn't work for them, and battle magic, which I've played several times with because I didn't want to use illusion, and also doesn't work super well for them. And then they have illusion, and so they very very often end up just ogres are just running an illusion slaughtermaster guy. He's mostly just using doppelganger with his very powerful weapon that he brings with him, and then also casting Miasma Barrage on people to try to make sure that the ogres can actually charge you because it's really easy to just go, oh no, ogres, and then just run away.
all right, so let's go through the lore real quick. For those not familiar with the signature spell, is the glittering robe. It's an self cast enhancement, and then effectively it lasts till the start of the next turn. -1 to hit, which is pretty great. It also affects the unit the caster has joined. So I've definitely used this on vampires and other things. It's great to have it when you're there. It just makes your character in particular feel a little bit more confident when standing out in the open.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you versus things that auto hit, like magic missiles or things like cannonballs and such. But again, for a character on a mount, pretty effective. You can also join a unit with it. If you just depend, you're facing a gun line on the other side, you're going to be glad that you have this. So I'm a big fan of the spell.
It's also just really useful to casting it on a unit that of infantry. So when you're just sitting there and you're like, I know someone's just going to charge me. It would be amazing if I could just not have my whole rank die. Cast Glittering
Hmm.
Robe. It's also incredibly useful on a Weapon Skill 7 Vampire Lord who's sitting on top of a dragon. They just cast themselves and say, great. Anyone
Hmm.
who comes into me, very likely hitting on a 5 plus now. Awesome. I very much appreciate that. So it's super cool. And if you're a level 1, you can always just take Illusion, pick Glittering Robe, and then that's really useful. And it's only an 8 plus to go off. So even if you're level 1, you got a pretty good shot at
Hmm.
getting it off. I think it's a great, amazing signature spell. There you go.
Yep, it's great because it's also effective versus shooting and combat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what makes it really cool.
Unless if you're fighting Tomb Kings, who they do not care because they're
Well,
broke.
there's like everything in the game, there's exceptions to all the rules and counters for everything.
Yeah.
All right, this first spell, Mind Razor. So this is its magic missile, 15-inch range, 7 plus to cast, so low casting value. What does it do? You immediately take a leadership test. That's weird. I thought you said magic missile. So they immediately take a leadership test. If they passed, they suffer D3 strength 3 hits with AP nothing. But if they fail, they suffer D3 plus 3 strength 4 hits with an AP of -3. So a failed test is significantly more powerful than a pass test, but right, so this just depends on the type of enemy that you're facing on the other side of the battlefield. If you're facing, trying to shoot this on some goblins or things, if they're not in warband or whatever, if they're, leadership 7 or something, you have a 50-50 chance. But if you're casting it versus elves, or if you're casting it versus things that allow them to retake a leadership test, not so effective.
So, fun fact, Mike. One time I was
Mm.
playing Martin, and we were both playing Empire,
Oh, okay.
and he cast Mind Razor on one of my Wizard Lords because that was the only
Oh,
magic missile he had. So I risked sending my Leadership 8 Wizard Lord out in the open, within range of his thing, because I just didn't respect the spell. I passed the leadership check,
oh, so you should be safe, right?
and then he hit me with 3 strength 3 hits and wounded
Okay,
me
you
with
still
all
should
of
be
them,
fine.
and then I
Oh,
died.
well, serves you right for being arrogant. Um, So, I mean, any wizard by himself is always taking a risk. And that being said, so I mean, it's a fine spell. It's only a 7 to cast. I don't particularly love it just because I feel, except for this random solo wizard story we're talking about, right? More often than not, more than 50% of the time, the vast majority of the game is going to pass this test. And therefore, it's going to be doing the weaker version of it, and the weaker version of it is very weak. So again, I wish that there was something else that the spell offered for when they're passing the test, because D3 strength 3 hits no AP, the vast majority of the time when you cast the spell, that's what you're going to get. So that's my criticism of the spell.
Yeah, I will say one thing that if you very often you might find yourself wanting to combine illusion with necromancy in
Hmm.
Empire or in Vampire Counts, for example. And
Hmm.
when you
Hmm.
combine lowering enemies' leadership with Mind Razor, you suddenly have a very cheap magic missile that can actually do something decent with people. So yeah,
Yes.
and I think that every single spell lore in the game intentionally had a couple spells that are not very good, and they're put there on purpose to make the lore a little bit less powerful in some ways. And I think every lore in the game has pretty much one of every spell type, except for one that they kind of have. They have two of, so they'll have like 2 hexes, something, for example. I don't think any of them have 2 magic missiles because that would be broken. But yeah, they'll have 2 of something. And in this case, illusion, it's not a magic missile spam lore. That's not what it's doing.
Yeah, I hear you, and maybe I don't buy that that they intentionally decided to make, oh, 1 of 6 or 2 of 6 spells are going to be not good. I think that was just they're clearly trying to hit a spectrum of all the different styles of spell, hex spells, missile spells, et cetera, themes and flavor. And I think some of them are mechanically very effective all the time. I think part of the criticism I have is you don't get to pick your spells unless you take the thing to pick your spells, but you're already investing so many points into that spell, that wizard. I don't know why I have to roll and get a spell that is not effective or has too many terms and conditions, or that is again, it could still be a good magic missile. It doesn't have to be I wipe out the enemy unit. For an example, let's say they pass the leadership test. It's only D3 strength 3 hits, no AP. That's fine. It could still also apply if you wound them with one of them with, it gives them -1 movement or something else. Like there are plenty of ways to it's not being a kill, crush the enemy, that they could still have made every spell good. But either way, we don't know the answer to that. We were just speculating on that. But anyway, Mind Razor, pros and cons. Not the most effective magic missile in the game. But super fun if you could pull off a combo. You just have to invest heavily in that leadership combos to get this to go off. And that's just a lot of wizard points to be spending on that. All right, the second spell, Shimmering Dragon. So there's a conveyance spell. Right, 8 plus to cast, 12 inches. Target friendly characters. You're targeting friendly characters. If the target friendly character is not fleeing, yada yada yada. If you've not already moved, you gain Fly 10 special rule until the end of your next turn. So I definitely used this before. It's a super fun spell to use. Typically, I also get myself into trouble when I take a character by himself and fly away from my other units that were protecting him from missiles and weapons and other dangerous things. And so, I caution you against being careful how far you let that shimmering dragon take your wizard or other character far away, because you're staying typically near your units for a reason.
Okay.
Yeah, can be a lot of fun.
I think that the
Now,
vast
yeah,
majority of times you have a character by themselves, they're usually flying, they're riding something that's flying 10 anyway, or they're a wizard who doesn't really want to run around and wants to hide. However, if you have an
yeah,
ogre on a stonehorn or something, he's pretty slow, so making him fly 10 is actually pretty great.
yep. There are definitely a few version or instances where this is helpful, but exactly to Evan's point, the majority of time a character is by himself. They're on a large mount, or a mount that's flying. The number of larger than cavalry, a large beastie mount that a character's on, where he's comfortable being by himself, that doesn't fly. Oh, we went to Google there, Evan.
Oh,
Um,
shoot.
lost their list. All right, so that was Shimmering Dragon, right? So it allows you, gives you that conveyance, but again, the biggest criticism we have of it is the flying and whether or not that's applicable to a wizard that would want to fly away from his units, or if you're on a big monster, typically have fly already. All right, so moving on to the third spell. This one was really popular at first, still popular, but really hard to get off because it's 10 plus casting Crystal Column. So 10 plus to cast, so one of the hardest spells to get off, range it's 9, but you put that large blast template down, right 9 inches away from the caster, but it creates this impassable terrain with no line of sight that can be drawn through. Evan, how many times has this affected a game you've played?
Um, Quite a lot. I think the
Hmm.
time that comes to mind the most is I was playing against Leo and he had a Skaven, and I killed some kind of unit and my dragon overran off the table. And when you overrun off the table, you have to come back on in a very specific spot.
Hmm.
So we realized, oh, if you just put Crystal Column immediately in front of where my dragon just left, it will come on the table and then be stuck.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
can't fly
That's the
over it,
problem.
so I immediately have to try to just go around it and just get Curse of Miasma Mirage or whatever to death immediately after that, and it was just going to be a huge nightmare. So it was like, wow, that's an incredibly good spell. Just put some big block of impassable terrain right in front of me. Yikes!
Yep.
Right?
Great spell. All right, kind of ripping through the rest of them, right? The fourth one is Confounding Convocation. So it's a hex, 9 inches away. Remains in play, right? It, if it creates stupidity on the enemy, its stupidity can be really, really powerful. It remains in play, which is
Its
great.
nine-inch range hex makes it impossible to ever cast on anybody ever.
Yeah, so let's move on. That's the problem.
And then
Spectral
they give them
Toggle,
stupidity, and then they pass the test. So it's whatever.
yeah, and then yeah, so you're not wrong. So not great. Spectral Doppelganger, that's a 5. Their fifth spell, so it's 9 plus to cast. Everyone loves this combo. Everyone keeps trying to pull off this combo because if the
Yeah, it
caster
never
gets into combat,
happens.
you get the 2d6 strength hits off with whatever weapon you're happening. So everyone wants to get that big character on their flying creature to go charge and chase whatever they're going to charge and chase with their ogre blade or whatever big weapon they could give them, and just having to get the charge off, getting the character you want to get to, casting the spell, not getting dispelled, and then getting it, just it's just so hard to pull off. If you pull it off, it is the coolest thing ever. And then you crush
Then you
typically
roll
whatever you hit.
2 on the number of hits.
That happens too. But I can tell you, I pulled this off a few times with my vampire count on an abyssal terror, with his ogre blade charging into something, and ooh boy, was that spicy and exciting. Take that, Chaos Lord. Whack, whack, whack. It was super fun. And then, oh, you're still alive on one wound left. Well, now I have my normal attacks. Ah, hit you again. So I love that spell. But again, very hard to get that combo off. Okay, and then the last one is the Miasma Mirage. That's a hex, 11-inch range, right? 15, or sorry, 11 plus to cast. The one even harder to cast the Crystal Column, 15-inch range. To the Sonic subphase, right? The enemy unit will suffer -2 to its movement characteristics. It cannot march or charge. Wow, super powerful. So you're not totally keeping them in place, but it's pretty close to it. And just saying you can't charge or march, that's massive. Effectively, I mean, it almost takes them out of play for an entire turn.
Yeah, this is incredibly powerful. It's also incredibly unfun, especially when someone doesn't know to constantly be measuring the 15 inches away from this wizard who can cast this at all times and is forgetting and moving within range of it. Um, you know who can make this cast even further is a Dark Elf wizard with Focus Familiars. And I think it just Miles Barrage you from 27 inches away.
Hmm.
That is game breakingly shutting down powerful against somebody who just can't dispel it. Very, very good.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone's even trying to do
Yep.
that, but it's very good. Um, I think that overall, this is a very, very powerful lore that doesn't actually lead to that many fun games, especially if you're not playing at the top table in an event. It's kind of annoying. It can very often lead you to just make the other person not get to have any fun because most of what you're doing is trying to stop the other person from moving, shooting, fighting, or hitting you. And
Yep.
then,
And
the most fun it has is Doppelganger, which is just kind of like a hilarious Hail Mary spell, but everything else in here is very consistently just shutting down the other person's fun, right?
yep, it is a control list.
Yeah.
That's what this or lore that's what this
But it's
lore
an
is.
all or
It's a,
nothing control list. It's not slowing
mhm,
someone down, making it hard. It's mostly just no. And it's
pretty
like,
binary.
and when you cast Miles Mirage on the same unit multiple turns in a row, you're like, why is this in the game? Because it can feel incredibly feels bad. Now, when you're a very good player, this doesn't happen to you because you either have an automatic dispel item like the Sigil of Asurnian that High Elves can bring, or you just don't move within range.
Yeah,
But
but we're not focused on those meta
yeah,
players. We're talking about just
yeah,
two friends having a fun
90%
time
of
or
the people
going
who
to
are
an
playing
event.
this are going to be like,
Um,
that wasn't fun. The game got less
no,
fun because we used it.
I agree. Like it is meta wise. If you're trying to win your games, it can be very powerful and can
Yeah.
absolutely win games. In terms of let's have fun, is this making the game more fun? It's the opposite. It's actually a fun suck.
Mm-hmm.
Because it basically means you don't get to play when the spell is working properly, which is super not cool. So I would put this pretty low on the list. So Evan, we got to
Where
put
I'm
it
going to
somewhere.
put it is conditionally neat because I think that Doppelganger is the one spell in here that isn't, it can be good, but it's often not very reliable. And it can create some really funny combos, like you have that thing that doesn't work anymore, like taking the Mace of Hellstrom with the Illusion Wizard with Empire and
Yeah.
trying to do the D6 damage hits a bunch of times that you're not allowed to do. But or just Dragon Slayer Sword, and Illusion, right? And you're just like, ah ha ha, and then you get 2 hits and no one rolls a 6 and you just get squatted like a bug. So that's fun, and that's the fun part of it, and everything else is kind of very, very control
Yep.
and
Fun suck.
sadness. Yeah,
All right, let's move on. What do we have next?
we have Troll Magic, which I'm going to pull up here in front of me, so I'll read this one.
All right.
Um, so the first spell, the signature spell, which is incredibly important, is called Big Smarts, which is enchantment and reigns in play. But the main thing you're doing it for is you cast this spell, and everyone who's in command range of the caster immediately can re-roll any stupidity test they failed earlier in this turn. So it really helps the Troll Horde list just supercharge their stupidity and try not to fail it a million times in a row. And when you play against a Troll Horde player, they've got a bunch of different wizards. They're all rolling big smarts. They're all having a bubble that gives the trolls nearby leadership that isn't freaking 4. It's slightly better than 4.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they still somehow fail some of these, and you're like, cool. Anyway, can we keep playing
Yeah.
now? So it kind of
Yeah.
just slows the game down a little bit. But I really respect that it's called Big Smarts, and I'm just like, cool, whatever.
Yeah. It's a good name. Well, you're if you're playing against a troll horde player, that person is there to have fun, and you're almost always going to have a good game with that person.
So the next spell is Acidic Bile, which is a magic missile that does the exact same thing as Doombolt, except that it scatters D3 plus 1 inches first.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
awful. That sucks.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel so bad for you because Doombolt is already kind of
Scattering is not the
okay,
best.
and now this is scattering. And again, we've gone over this a couple times. Scattered D3+1 is not fun. That's not very exciting and
No.
interesting. It usually means with a 3-inch wide template, you generally just miss the entire unit you were shooting at. This
Yeah.
is my cat's tail right here. Hello. The next one is Troll Brains. Remains in play. When the spell's in play, the target enemy unit becomes subject to stupidity. That's similar to this illusion one. It's just it's 15-inch range instead of 9-inch range, right? And it does lower the leadership by 1, so it's a little bit more interesting. However, if you're playing against any normal, reasonable player, they usually have leadership 9 general, and then -1 from that. It's not that big of a deal, right? So
No, it's rarely going to be effective.
yeah.
Yep. So not the
Um,
best.
Next one, Ravenous Recourse. All friendly units that have the Stupidity special rule and they're within 12 inches get +2 to their movement. That's cool.
That's
Really
very
helps you
cool.
charge further. 8-inch move
Yeah.
on trolls instead of 6 is very cool for charging further. I think that's a great one.
Big deal.
You have to try to kind of set this up so that you have a whole wall of trolls. They're all about to charge, I guess.
Hmm.
Then we have Fetid Whirlpool. Remains in play. 3-inch blast template. Can you put it 18 inches away? Obviously, it's treated as dangerous terrain because every single vortex in the game is treated as a dangerous terrain. The
Hmm.
template moves d6 in a random direction, and if it hits a unit, they get d3+3 strength 4 hits, AP2. So it is moving in a random direction, but it is 1 strength higher than Pillar of Fire. So
Hmm.
that's fine. I think that's pretty good. Um,
Yeah, I think one strength higher is a big deal. Again, it's I personally have more fun with the vort. I know it sounds silly, but I always have less fun with Pillar of Fire. Of oh, I know it's just going to rip through my units. Versus okay, let's roll for the scatter die of this vortex. Is it going to hit me? Is it going to hit you? Where's it going to go? That I think is actually a lot more fun. So I'd much rather have the vortexes be more powerful and them being random, and then we have that fun moment of where is it going to go?
yeah. So the next one, Torrent of Filth, is an assailment, and it's basically exactly the same thing as Stream of Corruption. It's just a flame template, assailment spell, strength 3 AP2. Doesn't have to scatter, thank God, and it just hits people you're in combat with, which if you're a troll hag, you often are in combat, so that's great.
Oh yeah, hmm,
And then
yeah,
finally, the
absolutely.
last one, Rapid Regeneration is an enchantment that gives a unit flammable and regen 5 plus, which if you're
Ooh,
running Troll Horde and you have an army full of trolls, they already have all of that.
hmm,
However, I think the correct way to play Troll Horde is to bring at least some orcs with you as well, because they make great, kind of objective holders. They make great, foot slog infantry. They got skirmish.
hmm.
They can kind of help you out in combat res and bringing banners and stuff like that. So giving those other units regen 5 plus, perfectly fine.
Hmm.
The problem is, I think that this is a lore that very often gets kind of it's not necessarily because you want to take it, but people are just taking it on all these different wizards because they need to try to not be stupid with their massive wall of trolls,
Hmm.
and that's most of what it's doing. It's just that signature spell, which is just trying to make regular troll units turn into units that aren't stupid anymore, which is fine. And I think that there's
Yeah,
not necessarily that many funny things in here. Like the troll hag herself and her random chart of attacks is way more fun than most of these spells.
yeah, I agree. I really like the troll list. I really like the hag in it and the magic items and the benefit. But is that lore actually more fun, or is it just trying to compensate my stupidity? And it's just a clut. It's like I'd rather just the army had built-in mechanics. And again, the other, yeah, I'm not in love with the lore. I don't think it's increasing the fun factor.
I will say though that when the orcs and goblins players are using it, they're having fun.
Well, orcs and goblin players are usually always having fun, because that's what makes them orcs and goblin players is they love having fun.
Yeah,
Getting into a scrap. All right, we got to put this somewhere. Where are we going to put it?
I'm gonna put it here because I think they got some fun stuff in here. It's really funny to be like, well, failed my stupidity test. Let's reroll it. Well, failed it again. Let me cast the big smarts from the next wizard. And usually when the
Yep.
person's doing this whole rigmarole, I'm like, I'm not gonna dispel that. Go for it. I don't.
We'll say, yeah, it definitely is. I think that's fair above illusion because illusion is taking the fun away from me, versus this is like you're just trying to not hurt yourself with stupidity. So definitely should be above that. I think that's very reasonable. All right, what do we have next?
So next we have this little Empire Wizard guy here. He's representing Elementalism today.
Ooh,
Um,
elementalism.
So Elementalism, one of the top 3 lores in the game. One of the reasons why is because we have spells here that are very universal. Both the enchantment and the hex last for 2 rounds, so it's your turn and the next person's turn, which make them very super useful at either I'm about to charge you and get into combat, or I want to cast it and then I want to shoot at you, and then if you charge me, the spell's still active, right? And that is not the case for dark magic, demonology, stuff like that. So where they're not still active. So that's one of the reasons why it's super super useful. Plague of Rust, one of the most amazing spells in the game. It really absolutely catapults units like poison archers and just regular strength 3, spearmen or whatever into the stratosphere with just saying you just have less armor, and that could just dramatically increase the damage you can
Yeah.
do to people. And then you have Traversal
So
Pathways, which is incredibly broken. So like this is just a lore of it's a toolbox really, more than a lore of magic, and it's great at doing all those cool things when you're trying to play it at its peak performance. And then it's also kind of boring to me because there's not a lot of crazy stuff in here. Like there's not a lot of like wacky, ooh, what's gonna happen next kind of stuff in here.
True. That's true, right? So the signature spell, right, is the Storm Call. So that's your hex. Again, it's a good hex. It reduces enemies' movement and initiative. Great.
It's also just
Um,
12-inch range though, so
yeah, which is the typical problem with most hexes. That's not specific to this hex. That is a problem with most hexes. Is
yeah.
you have to really get close to pull them off, and I think the hexes would be a lot more enjoyable if the wizard could cast them at 18-inch. But we see these 12-inch hexes, and that is uncomfortably close for almost every wizard in the game. Okay, so then right, the first spell is a flaming sword, assailant spell. It's good, right? D6 strength 3 hits, no AP. But again, it's a good number of hits. It's nothing to call home about it. Pretty straightforward.
It's
Um,
barely any number of hits that are flaming, which a lot of people consider to be a negative thing. But like in Flaming
yeah,
Sword in Fire Magic, that used to be one of my favorite Fire Magic spells in 8th edition. It was like it would make your unit hit harder, and they turned it into an assailant spell that does basically nothing. It's kind of sad. I feel like it's a little
it
bit.
doesn't do a lot, and no
I,
AP
I
is
would
what
really
also
like
makes
it
it
if
tough.
this was like D6 plus 3 hits or D6 plus 1 hits, even that's like the strength of the caster. So at the very least, I'm swinging a flaming sword at you and it hits at however strong I am. I think that'd be really
Yeah,
cool. And it would make the Treeman Ancient, who's like strength 6 casting this, like
yeah.
actually different than if, some Weasley little book snob is casting it, right?
Yeah, if it was the strength of the caster or the strength of the caster's weapon or whatever, it would
It's
just
pretty cool.
open up the more combo possibilities. But by just being always a flat 3, you just don't have there's nowhere to go with it. So that's a great example that Evan's pointing out where just that one tweak would open up a whole bunch of permutation potentials that could make it really interesting. And we talk number 2, right? Plague of Rust. This is definitely one of the best spells in the game, right? Hex. This one is a hex with a 21-inch range. Notice how we said hex and ranges matter a lot. This is one of them. 9+ to cast, right? To start the next phase, sub phase, right? The target said -2 to their armor value. It's huge. You could also cast it into combat. It's pretty straightforward. Just saying 21 inches away, you can reduce a unit in combat armor value by 2. Massive. Super powerful. One of the most powerful spells in the game.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
it's not super unfun because generally you're casting on somebody who has a really good armor save, so it's not
mhm,
necessarily going to be, you have no armor save ever again. It's usually you're casting on
that would
somebody
be
who's got like
different.
3+ or 2+, and you're just lowering it a bit. So it's not like Mice Mirage where it's just you just can't charge or move or march, so you're just sitting
Yep.
there doing absolutely nothing useful pretty much.
And if you had ward saves, you could still use those. If you had, and you
Yeah,
still have your toughness, so everything still has to happen. So it doesn't completely turn off all your defensive mechanics. It just turns off one of them. And again, it's very effective at punishing those higher armor units. All right. The third one, summon elemental spirits. This is a vortex, right? We talked about that. 9-inch, 9+ to cast, 15-inch range remains in play. It's a small one. Right. We've got the dangerous terrain, like they all have. It moves D6 in a random direction, start of every turn. Right. So it's the random mover. If it hits a unit, D6 or D3 plus 3 strength 4 hits with AP -1. So it's good.
yeah. It also
Nothing
blocks line of
crazy.
sight, which can be useful, although it does move randomly, which means you can't necessarily just use it to block things on purpose.
Yep.
Also, it doesn't move.
Yep. So I think it's a good average vortex, but again, nothing too exciting. And because it's random, there's not really a lot of combos you're going to get out of this. It just kind of does what it does, and it's fine. Earthen Ramparts. This one is very very powerful. It's 10+ to cast. That's why 15-inch range. This is called all sorts of controversy with FAQs, and we're not going to get into all that right now. So we could spend a whole episode talking about how the communities ruled it, how GW ruled it, the confusion of this and that. Oh my goodness, we're not going to get into that. Needless to say, you're casting on Friendly unit, you get a 5+ ward save, pretty cool. Against anyone suffered, counts as being defended lowland or obstacle. If charged, that's the part that causes all sorts of conflict and confusion. However, this spell remains in play. The unit cannot march or charge themselves. So it is very much like "come at me, bro" kind of spell buff you're going to cast on your unit.
Yeah. It is one of those spells where I cast on myself and then I proceed to not pass any of the ward saves that I get when my unit gets attacked. And I'm like, what the hell did I buy this?
Well, roll better. That does happen. But again, that is one of the ones that I think are is more interesting out of the lore. 5 is Wind Blast. This one, right, is pretty good magic missile, only range 15. The unit suffers though D6, D3 plus 3 strength 5 hits with AP1. So strength 5 is pretty powerful. But the biggest thing is it also gives ground. So again, you can catch someone off guard who is too close to a table edge and blast them off of it. Originally, in the core rule book, they would stop, they would not go off with give ground, but then they did put it in the GW FAQ that nope, you give ground, you touch the battlefield edge, you are gone. So can be very, very powerful. But again, veteran players will just stay more than 2 inches away from the edge, and this will not come into play. But it could definitely catch your friends off guard if they're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
Right, and mystical pathways. Oh boy, did this still causes frustration and angst in the community, right? Because it's so powerful. So conveyance spell, pick up a unit, move it 12 inches away. The biggest conflict that you're going to get in the community is the unit wholly within that 12-inch rate distance,
Yeah.
or just partially within. Obviously, the big thing here is if you have a big, the wider unit, right, will suddenly 12 inches from one location to another. If just you had to tow in it on one side or another, suddenly you have models in the unit that could be going 20 plus inches in their distance. We're not here to debate that right now. I'm hopefully GW will do their FAQ about that in the future, but most communities have done their own FAQ. I can tell you in our Old World Legends FAQ, we have said no, the unit must be wholly within that distance because that feels correct
Yeah, I
in
don't
the
fully
way that we
understand
play
what
the game.
wholly within means. My personal take, I would love it if it was center to center. The center of unit can be placed 12 inches away, but
Yeah,
I don't know what wholly
that's another
within
way to do it,
means.
but well, they explain it really well in 40K. They don't explain it very well in Old World, so they
Okay.
really just need to bring over that information into Old World. Because 40K went over this a whole bunch in the last few editions. So anyway, that's what that's from. All right, so that's the lore though. And as we said, this is one of the most powerful lores in the game. But we're not here to talk about how powerful it is. We're talking about how fun is it to play it on the battlefield.
It's boring. I find it boring. I can't even really put my
Well,
finger on exactly why. One of the main reasons why is because all of the spells are so universally decent that it kind of feels like you're not really playing a flavor. Like this is vanilla ice cream. You know, we got Rocky Road, we got mint chocolate chip, we got like lemon sorbet, and then we have this. It's vanilla ice cream. Who wants
yeah,
to eat vanilla ice cream?
well, a lot of people do. That's why they still serve it everywhere.
Lame
Um,
people.
well, it's a very popular flavor, sir. That being
It's just
said,
designed by committee, just acceptance of mediocrity. I'm just gonna throw it into conditionally neat, and we're gonna move on.
yeah, I mean, in terms of fun factor, in terms of am I getting off really exciting combos? Am I really building wizards specifically to do things? Am I really, doing any how I feel super smart moments? No, it's very effective. It's very good at what it does. And it does everything pretty well. Yep.
I think
All
one
right,
of the
what's
big
next?
letdowns for me is that I really wish there was something like Wissen's Wild Form in here, like +1 strength, +1 toughness. Elementalism feels like it's inspired a lot by the lore of beasts, and not having that spell in here really feels like a bummer because I feel like that'd be way more fun than I can't charge you. I'm behind a low linear obstacle and have 5 up ward.
Yeah, the whole defensive aspect or the lack of it's
Wissen's Wild
I
Form would be
can't
way better.
yeah, it'd be way more interesting. And again, the vortex itself is also that is as baseline vortex as you can get. I think that's
Yeah.
totally true. Flaming Sword just really isn't just that compelling. It just doesn't do anything interesting. Plague of Rust is good. I don't really have any complaints about that. It is effective at taking
My
down this
complaint,
armor
I'd
thing.
say, is that -2 to your armor save for those 2 rounds in a row is so nuclearly good when what happened before was way better. It was remains in play and it just basically gave you -1 permanently instead. So it wasn't -2 all at once, but it was -1 and you could keep building it up. You could slowly remove people's armor saves over time. You kind of keep stacking it. And I really like the idea that your armor rusts and just falls right off. It's useless and it stays that way. But not that it's just -2, but only for that. Well, I mean, it's not just for one turn. It's for 2 turns in a row where I can use it to stand and shoot or shoot at you and do a bunch of
Yep.
damage to you, and then you have a ton less armor when you get into combat. It's like it's almost like a simplified it, but in a way that's actually less interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think that's to your point. Like it all feels very simple. Like there, these spells typically do one thing, and they don't typically do anything spicy or exciting. Or and the combos just,
Ah,
it's limiting. It's
okay,
limiting.
okay, I got it, Mike. Got it, Mike. Remains in play. At the start of each of your turn phases, your armor save gets reduced by 1 more until you get rid of it. So it starts at -1. The next turn it's
Yep.
-2. Turn after that it's -3, and it keeps getting worse till you get rid of it.
Mhm.
That I solved it. That's way more fun. Immediately more fun.
There's definitely multiple ways to solve this. Again, if we did the thing with the flaming sword where it was the strength of the caster, not just strength 3. Now you could have more combos with that, right? Earth and rampart. All of there's just a lot of potential
No,
here where
all right.
the foundation of the spells are good. But let's move on.
This is dreadful.
Dreadful. I
It
would not
bores me
say,
to absolute tears, and I refuse to play it. It makes me fall asleep. Everything in here is
but
less
I
exciting than it could
wouldn't
be.
say that
Dreadful.
is worth an illusion. At least as the other player, illusion makes me have less fun. I am not having less
Right,
fun
right.
when we're
And
playing
remember,
this
Mike,
spell.
I think you and I kind of focus a little bit different on these tier lists, right? There's a percentage of this which is how much fun it is for the other person, right? And there's a percentage of this that's how much fun for you.
Right,
And
and
at
so I'm
least
saying,
where I'm
in
coming
my
from,
opinion, illusion. If you're casting illusion, I'm the other player. I am going to have
right,
less fun in this game.
right. And
So
and
to
I'm
me,
saying I'm
that is
saying
the
you're
worst
considering
in this
more
sport.
the other player's fun and enjoyment, and I'm considering more about
Yes.
the caster's fun and enjoyment. And at the very least, illusion has spectral doppelganger. What does elementalism have that has any kind of like spicy, interesting, unique, different, wacky, what if this could happen, far-fetched idea? Like nothing.
That's fair. That's fair. Pros and cons. Well, I'd say they're at least on the same level then.
Sure.
So they
Then
can
maybe
both
we
be in
have to
dreadful. They
be.
can both be
They're
in
both dreadful.
condition.
There we go. They're both dreadful.
There we go. All right, everybody wins. Let's move on.